the OnVisible property. Now the OnVisible property is connected or applicable to screen control. Now I have several screens in my app, and this particular screen is screen 2. So the OnVisible property is about what actions the app take when the user navigates to this particular screen. There are a number of ways to use this property, and for our example we are going to create 2 examples to explain the OnVisible property. Now the first example is that we want to update a gallery. We want to update the gallery when a user navigates to this particular screen. There are ways in order to improve your performance of the app. Galleries may be connected to a collection instead of the original table or the data source. Now you also want your users to get the current data or records in the gallery for their usage. So one of the use is to use the OnVisible property. So let's go and check what we have. In the OnVisible property of this particular screen, I am creating a collection from a table called application. So OnVisible of this particular screen, I'm creating a collection. I'm putting the data in a table into this collection named student, my student. Now I have put the collection on a gallery item. So I want everything that is reflected in the table application into the student. Now I also have a patch button here. Now that we are going to send some record into the database. Now after we have sent the record to the database, you can either use a refresh button or a refresh functionality to update the gallery, or you can also navigate to another screen and back, and that is going to also refresh the gallery, same as using the refresh button. Now if you have the refresh button, users may end up clicking it several times, which may reduce the performance or which will cause the performance of the app. So one of the ways is to use the OnVisible property. Now before I go ahead, the OnVisible property takes effect after you have navigated to another screen and back before it takes effect. So let's create a record. Currently we have 3 names. So I have 3 records and I have my patch. We are patching to the customer column in our table, and we are using this text box named name tst. Okay, so let's go ahead. See that we change name to say Zion. And we click on the patch. Okay, so we see that the data has been sent to our database. The Zion for the customer has been sent to the database, but it is not reflected. Now one way is to insert a refresh button or a button with the function of refresh, as I said earlier. Another way is to use the navigation button. So let's go to another screen and then back. before the OnVisible property takes effect. So we go to screen, another screen, then we go back to our screen. We see that the Zion is reflected. So that is one of the usage of OnVisible property. Another way to use OnVisible property is to create a variable. So for instance, we have this gallery and we have some checkboxes inside the gallery. What we want to do is that anytime a user navigates to this screen, we want the checkboxes unticked. So if we have not created any variable, let's see how it behaves. So we check on Yvonne, we check on Aku, we also check on Yao. Then we move to a different screen. Then let's go back to the screen. You see that the checkboxes are still ticked. Now what if we want the users to have the checkbox unticked anytime we navigate to this particular screen? So we are going to use the OnVisible property of this screen. So let's create a variable. We are going to use the update context. Update context. Let's have a name our variable. Unchecked. Var unchecked. We set it to true. Sorry. Var unchecked. Okay. Then we set the default. So let's make it false rather, because we want it to be unchecked. We set the default of the checkbox to the name of the variable. Okay. So let's take as we did earlier. We move to a different screen. Then we come back to the same screen. We see that they are all unchecked. Earlier, because we didn't have the OnVisible property, when we came back to this particular screen after navigation, the checkbox was still ticked. So that is another usage of the OnVisible property. As I said earlier, there are countless ways of using the OnVisible property of the screen. I hope this video was useful. Thank you.